on the right hand side.
Send them up. Test it. Why not? Mic check. Mic check.
The sound is okay. I mean, it's gonna pick up the sound, but it comes in like static and muffled, so we don't know until it's
Oh, to the
Yeah. No, I heard it. Fine.
Fine,
Do it
right?
again.
Okay, it's good.
We can actually hear you guys on YouTube.
Oh, let me know when you're ready. Live. Ah, Shalom, Yasha Allah, and blessed Sabbath to y'all who's out there, and welcome back to this Sabbath. Just want to give, like I do before my classes, just certain items of preparedness, just to make you think. You don't necessarily have to get those items, but it's to make you think. And I kind of categorize this one as fire, okay? Because fire, it plays a big role in your prepping, period. If you want to cook, if you want to boil water, if you want to sanitize, let's say a knife to do some cutting or some um, first aid on a person, but fire is very, very crucial. And it's just some simple terms like, for instance, I brought out, I think before, about the lighters, right? Real cheap, about 20 something bucks, and you get over, I think about 50 of them. but it's good for barter as well for those who may not have fire or have a lighter, whatever the case may be. But it's good for yourself, but it's good for barter as well. So I just want to put that out there. Then, if you look at these little gels, we call them the lighters, right? I seen a guy on YouTube put holes in them, and then once he put holes in them, what happened was he actually had a flame, and it actually, this one says 2 hours, but if you put the hole in the top of it without popping the middle, it actually lasts a little bit longer, and you can actually cook on that as well, or you can also keep warm, so, and these things come, I think, in 6 in a pack, 12 in a pack, and 22 if you get a box of them, real small. From Smart and Final.
Sternum.
Yeah, anywhere you can find these anywhere. Sternum.
Is that what that is?
We call them lighters for candles. It's for your heating up when you have the dishes, and you actually heating up in a pan. Burners. There you go. Burners. It's sternals or whatever it's called. But they're very good. Good to have at the house. Don't spoil. So it's just something to think about. And these little candles, right? These little bitty candles right here are good to have at the house as well. They're good for, I think they're good for like incense. I mean, I don't know, the lighting for the oils, right? But you can use these things for a lot of good reasons. Like you say, if you have a big fire or trying to get a fire started, the wax will actually keep it going. But it's just small, compact that you can keep with you. It's cheap. You get, I don't know how many this is, but 50, right? 50 in the bag that you can just keep at the house. But you just want some kind of fire, okay? Some kind of fire that you want, especially, of course, the candles, as well. So stock up on that. Now, when I say prepping, I mean, it's for prepping, but it's also for survival as well. Because if you look at the earthquake that just recently they had, right? Those people are going to be without electricity. They're going to be without a number of things for a long time, months upon months upon months. And we know here in California, we have earthquakes. So to have these things at home somewhere, right, at your disposal, where you can make useful of them to get by however you may need to get by, So just keep that in mind. Like I said, just kind of want to bring certain things out just to get us thinking. Oh, also, brother had told me about, this is like length that's in your dryer. Okay. I started collecting it, and it just collected like over maybe a month. I got this much of length over here, just out of the dryer, which is a good starter fire. Okay. Brother Salak had told me about this, and he told me once you put it with, let's say you take a piece out or take a few of them out and just kind of rub them with some Vaseline, and it really gets the fire going. So just to keep that in mind. And a lot of those things that I just showed you, we actually use those during tabernacles. So tabernacles is a chance for you to understand, what you bought so that you can use it, as well as understanding why you need those things, because, you're out in the elements, you're out of your comfort zone, and those things can become very crucial, if we have a major earthquake or if the ish hit the fan. So just wanted to bring that out and get everybody to thinking about those things. And so from there, we're going to go into the lesson. This title of it is Israelite Black History. All right. Since it's supposed to be Black History Month, I figured that I'll just bring out some things that's dealing with Israelite Black history. And I kind of want to focus on Egypt. Not going to be long. It's going to be nice and short. But I just want to kind of focus on Egypt because I like to throw this out in those white Jewish people, the Amalekites. One of the main things I like to throw at them is ask them, where's the history of your forefathers in Egypt, right? And they like to say they like to stick with the Torah, Well, Exodus, definitely in the Torah, right? But they have no evidence that that was them, right, in Egypt at that time. So going back to how we are now, how can they say that they are the chosen uh, seed of God? How can they do that? Where's their history at? So I just want to reflect back on that just to kind of make us think as well. And we're going to talk about Joseph. So, but before let's get Jeremiah. Jeremiah chapter 6 and verse 16. Because we always got to, like you say, I'm going to let the scripture say it for itself. This is something that is profound. It's a profound statement that that the scripture is going to say. And the reason why is because all nations always reach back into their history. They always reach back and sit and put out to the world what their forefathers have done, right? And they always bring out their history to show their accomplishments over the centuries and over the decades and over the generations. So why can't we do it, right? Why can't we do and reach back and look back at our forefathers? Because we are the children of Israel. Make no mistake about it. Okay. Jeremiah
6 and 16.
Yeah, 6 and 16.
The book of Jeremiah, chapter 6 and verse 16. Thus saith the Lord, stand ye in the ways and see, and ask for the old paths. Where is the good way?
Where's the good way? Now it says the old path, the good way. We know, well, now we know it's the law. It's the laws of the Most High God. Not only that, but it's the historical events that happened to the Israelites that we can reach back and say, okay, let us start searching the old path of our forefathers. Okay, right, go ahead.
And ask for the old paths, where's the good way, and walk therein.
Now it says, where's the good way, and walk therein. That's what we're doing now. As we proclaim and knowing our nationality as Israelites, that's what we're doing. We're walking in that path. But as we walk in that path, we also want to reflect back and see what our forefathers was trying to tell us and what they went through, so that we can move forward with this new generation, right? As we move forward, but also to understand how our God works and how our God deals with his people. Okay, go ahead.
And walk therein, and ye shall find rest for your souls. But they said, we will not walk therein.
Right. So, we was rebellious and we did wrong. And from that, scriptures tell us that we will be going to captivity after captivity if we did not follow the law, statutes, and commandments. Okay, get Romans 15 and 4. So follow the old path. And that path that we took that journey on, we found out a whole lot about ourselves, to be honest with you. And we still finding out about ourselves, and the other nations are finding out about us as well, even in our ignorance. And at one point in time, everybody in this room and everybody that knows that they Israelites now, that I would say this generation, I would say from 70 years old till, I don't know, maybe, you got some 13, 14, 15-year-olds that's knowing they Israelites now. So that old path has came back and crept back upon us, that spirit that the Heavenly Father said that would never leave us. So we're there now. All right. 15 and 4.
Verse 4. For whatsoever things were written aforetime were written for our learning, that through patience and comfort of the scriptures might have hope.
Right, might have hope. And that's what, when I start looking at Egypt, right, and start looking at Joseph, and start looking at the 12 apostles. So that journey and what they went through in Egypt, the world really wants to just throw dust on top of that. They always say, well, the Egyptians did it. You look at, on TV now, when they start doing their documentaries, they never mention the Israelites there, maybe once or twice, but then that's it. They want to give all the regulation, all the credit to the Egyptians. Mind you, they were in power, right? They had the power, they had to say so, but also we had the knowledge, we had the skills, we had the strength to pull it off, to get it done. And they knew that, and they took advantage of that, which any nation should, right? I mean, we're going to take advantage of these other nations once we come into our kingdom. So that right there, read that again from the top.
Verse 4, Book of Romans chapter 15 and verse 4. For whatsoever things were written aforetime were written for our learning.
For our learning. And that's what we're doing. We continue to learn, like I said, about our forefathers. Go ahead.
That we through patience and comfort of the scriptures might have hope.
Might have hope. And our hope is now. Our hope is there already. So now we used to be hopeful at one point in time, especially our sisters and brothers doing slavery. But now our hope is coming to faith, right? So now we have the faith and believing into our God, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, you know, our forefathers, the patriarchs. So that's we're not hoping no more. We're into the faith aspect right now. So let's go over to Genesis. Let's start in Genesis 15. Let's start Genesis chapter 15. And I want to start at 11.
Gotcha.
Verse 11.
Yeah, verse 11.
Book of Genesis chapter 15 and verse 11.
Mhm,
And when the fowls came down upon the carcasses, Abram drove them away.
mhm.
And when the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell upon Abram, and lo, an horror of great darkness fell upon him.
Right. So at this point in time, real quick, the Most High was actually making his covenant with Abram at this point in time. And so he told him to make a sacrifice. And what had happened was that as he was waiting for the Heavenly Father to talk to him and accept the sacrifice, you know, the fowls came and they started to pick on the sacrifice. All right. So in between that time, he waited and waited, then he fell into a deep sleep. Go ahead.
Verse 13. And he said unto Abram, know but surely that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years.
Go ahead.
And also that nation whom they shall serve will I judge, and afterwards shall they come out with great substance.
Okay. So he said that nation started 13 again. I'm sorry.
Verse 13. And he said unto Abram, know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in the land that is not theirs,
Right.
and shall serve, and they shall afflict them 400 years.
Okay, 400 years. So keep reading. Because I got to preach that.
Verse 14.
Mhm.
And also that nation whom they shall serve,
Right. So he said, also that nation who they shall serve. Go ahead.
will I judge, and afterwards shall they come out with great substance.
With great substance. So let's find out who that nation was. Let's go to Exodus chapter 6. Exodus chapter 6, and we're going to read 6 through 7. So he said, and afterwards, that nation that our forefathers went into captivity, he said, he shall judge. But he said also that they will dwell in that land for over 400 years. Go ahead.
The book of Exodus chapter 6 and verse 6. Wherefore say unto the children of Israel, I am the Lord, and I will bring you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians.
There it is. So that's the nation that we felt that back in Genesis, that was the nation where our forefathers went into captivity for the disobedience of the laws and the commandments, right? Into Egypt. But mind you, when I say that they went into captivity, when we went into Egypt, we weren't enslaved. We didn't go into Egypt as slaves, okay? There was decades before that, before Moses came to deliver the children of Israel out of this captivity. Okay, go ahead.
Wherefore say unto the children of Israel, I am the Lord, I will bring you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians, and I will rid you of their bondage, and I will redeem you with a stretched out arm and with great judgments. And I will take you, and I will take you, me for a people, and will be to you a God, and ye shall know that I am the Lord your God, which bringeth you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians.
Exactly. So out of the Egyptians. So with that history being there, also it is prophesied. Let's get Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse 68 real quick, because he delivered us from that bondage when we were in Egypt, but also he's going to deliver us again out of this bondage, which is spiritual Egypt. So let's just grab that real quick. 28, verse 68.
The book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28, and verse 68.
Mhm.
And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships.
Now he
But
said he shall bring us again in Egypt again with ships. Now, we always make the picture of bringing about how you don't need ships, right, to go across the sand. So he said he would bring us again in Egypt with ships. Go ahead.
by the way whereof I spake unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again. And there you shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen.
Right. So we know the historical events, the old past, right? We search back and find out and was asking questions like, why did our forefathers go through this captivity, this slavery here in America? Right. Well, this is the answer right here. Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 15. It tells you about if we disobey the law, statutes, and commandments, that we will go into captivity. Then when you look at other captivities that the Israelites, our forefathers, was in, it was because they didn't follow the commandments of the Most High God. Okay, so this captivity, the point I'm trying to make is we went into Egypt, and at a certain point in time, we went into slavery, captivity, and then the Most High delivered us through the hands of Moses. This captivity, he's prophesied, meaning that once again, we will go back into slavery, right? Captivity, into Egypt, which is America, spiritual Egypt. But also, read on.
Thou shalt see it no more again, and there you should be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you.
Right, and no man shall buy you. So now, that's the delivery we're looking for to come out of this captivity, because it was prophesied to us. Okay, it was prophesied to us. Let's get Hosea 1 and 10 real quick, because it was prophesied to us that in the land of our captivity we will remember ourselves. So we're here now. Go ahead.
The book of Hosea, chapter 1, and verse 10. Yet the number of the children of Israel shall be as the sand of the sea, which cannot be measured nor numbered. And it shall come to pass that in the place where it is said unto them, ye are not my people, there it shall be said unto them, ye are the sons of the living God.
Right. We are the sons of the living power. So we've came to that conclusion already. That's why I say that we're rolling on faith now, because we're waiting for that deliverance, for the Heavenly Father to come and deliver us out of this captivity. And it's been a long captivity too. Our forefathers had to go through a lot of brutal murders, rapes, and shoot, you name it. I mean, we went through everything, as well as we did in Egypt. But we also prospered in Egypt, and a lot of us have prospered here in America as well. But this is not our rest. This is not the place where the Heavenly Father said that his children would reside in. Okay. So, was that all that? Yeah. Let's go back. I want to go back. So now I want to go back to Genesis and pick it back up. Pick up at 14, and we're going to read down. Genesis 15 and verse 14.
The book of Genesis, chapter 15, and verse 14. And also that nation whom they shall serve will I judge, and afterwards shall they come out with great substance. And thou shalt go to thy fathers in peace. Thou shalt be buried in a good old age.
So now he's talking. Go ahead to Abram.
But in the fourth generation they shall come hither again, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full.
Okay, that's all I wanted. So he was talking to Abram because he said that they would come out with great substance as well. Okay, so now let's go to Genesis chapter 4. Let's get into Egypt real quick. Let's get into Joseph in Egypt. And Genesis chapter 4 and verse 1. I'm sorry, verse 38.
14.
I'm sorry. Genesis, I'm sorry. Genesis chapter 41 and verse 38.
41.
Yeah, my bad. My bad. 41, and we're gonna start at 38. Now, what I'm trying to set up here is just us and the blessings of Joseph, right? We know that Jacob had 12 sons, and from his 12 sons, Joseph was one of them, but there was mischief done in between the brothers, and they dropped Joseph in a pit. And then from the pit, some Arabs came, some Ishmaelites came and picked up Joseph and took him to Egypt. And out of Egypt, he started to become blessed, right? That as the Most High prophesied that he would. Joseph with many colors, a coat of many colors. So we're going to pick it up there because I want to focus on the blessings that Joseph had when his brothers came into Egypt and a certain spot of land that they gave the Israelites and how prosperous it was. And then I want to show just a few pictures just on the pyramids, right? And who actually built the pyramids. Because like I said, they always give the Egyptians the credit for building these things, but the labor and the knowledge of them stay with our people. And we're going to show that, okay? So that's Genesis 41 and verse 38.
The book of Genesis, chapter 41 and verse 38. And Pharaoh said unto his servants, can we find such a one as this, a man in whom the Spirit of God is? And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, for as much as God hath showed thee all this, there is none so discreet and wise as thou art.
Right. So now they giving credit to Joseph. Go ahead.
Verse 40. Thou shalt be over my house, and according unto thy word shall all my people be ruled. Only in the throne will I be greater than thou.
Okay, I'm going to have him go back and read that because it's very important. Because now Joseph have proven himself and Pharaoh have made him a ruler over his house. Okay, that's big because Egypt wasn't no small cake anyway. Egypt was also prospering. Egypt was, quote unquote, the Americas back in those times. So now here's Joseph being blessed, and the Most High is using him to bring forth to bring forth other Israelites, right? Not other Israelites, but to bring forth the nation and to build the nation. But he did it in Egypt as Joseph was a ruler over Pharaoh's house. Go ahead.
Thou shalt be over
read
my
that
house.
Again?
Gotcha.
Yeah. Okay.
Verse 40. Thou shalt be over my house, and according unto thy word shall all my people be ruled.
See, all of my people be ruled. So Joseph was like, if you want to say you got a president, you got a vice president. So Joseph was the vice president, but he had the authority over all because, Pharaoh, he's not going to do anything but just give certain kind of orders. But other than that, they had to go through Joseph. Go ahead.
Only in the throne will I be greater than thou.
Right.
And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, see, I have set thee over all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh took off his ring from his hand and put it upon Joseph's hand and arrayed him in vestures of fine linen.
Right. So in 41, he said, and Pharaoh said unto Joseph, see, I have set thee over all the land of Egypt. So just keep that in mind. Go ahead. 42.
And Pharaoh took off his ring from his hand and put it upon Joseph's hand and arrayed him in vestures of fine linen and put a gold chain about his neck.
Go ahead.
And he made him to ride in the second chariot which he had.
So now Joseph has been putting up on high. Okay. So we got to think about that. Now we're talking about an Israelite. And once again, I'm going to show just a certain articles just showing how vast and how extravagant and beautiful Egypt was at that time. Go ahead.
Verse 43. And he made him to ride in a second chariot which he had, and they cried before him, bowed the knee. And he made him ruler over all the land of Egypt.
And he made him ruler over all the land of Egypt. That's the main point I want to bring out, and the message I'm trying to bring out is that Joseph was made king over all of Egypt. So when you start looking at documentaries about what the Egyptians have done, you also got to think about the Israelites as well. And not only think about them, but more so that the Heavenly Father blessed the children of Israel in Egypt so that they can be as a grand standout over all the world. You had other nations there. You had the Hamites. They was there, which is the Ephraimites are Hamites too. But you had other kingdoms, that was there as well. But the light and the glory was set on Egypt, just like the light and the glory is set on America. Why? Is because the children of Israel are here as well. Okay, go ahead.
Verse 44. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, I am Pharaoh, and without thee shall no man lift up his hand or foot in all the land of Egypt.
Now, those are some big things, because back then, as you read the history back then, a lot of the pharaohs and the kings, they were bloodthirsty. They didn't shoot nobody with no bullet. They was hand-to-hand combat. So you talking about axes and swords. We talking about limbs cut off, heads cut off. I mean, just brutal, just straight brutal. But like he said in 43, nobody should lift their foot or their hand. Let's read that again.
44. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, I am Pharaoh, and without thee shall no man lift up his hand or foot.
Now, think about that. No man within that whole region of Egypt. And Egypt is huge. Now, finish up.
No man lift up his hand or his foot in all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zapnath Paneah, and he gave him to wife Asenath, the daughter of Potipharah, priest of On. And Joseph went out over all the land of Egypt.
And Joseph went out of the whole land of Egypt. So also gave him, a wife as well. That's what I wanted. So just let's keep that in mind, how he was the ruler over all of Egypt. Okay. Let's stay right there. Let's go to 46. Right. Genesis 46, and we're gonna start at 1. Genesis 46, and yes, let's start at 1.
Gotcha.
Now keep in mind, now he said over all of Egypt, not a man should bow, not a man should raise his hand nor his foot against Joseph. So that's a great power that Pharaoh had placed upon Joseph. Okay, go ahead, finish up. Not finish up, but let's start at 46.
Book of Genesis, chapter 46, and verse 1. And Israel took his journey with that he had, and came to Beersheba, and offered sacrifices unto the God of his father Isaac. And God spake unto Israel in the visions of the night, and said.
Right. So now we say he spoke unto Israel, which is Jacob. And now he's telling Jacob, because what went down was the famine was in the land, so they had to go to Egypt to get food, to feed the family. So as they proceed to go down to the land, Joseph seen his brothers, and I hope you guys know the history of that. Well, sent his brothers back, told them that he stole something just to get him to come to Egypt. So Jacob knew that his son was alive at this time. So now the Heavenly Father is giving a vision to Jacob, saying that don't be scared to go into Egypt, all right, because he has certain things set up. Read on.
Verse 2. And God spake unto Israel in the vision of the night, and said, Jacob, Jacob. And he said, Here I am. And he said, I am God, the God of thy father. Fear not to go down into Egypt, for I will there make of thee a great nation.
Right. So now I will make there of thee a great nation. Now, at this point in time, Joseph is still there, but Pharaoh had made him king over all Egypt. So that prophecy that he was telling, that prophecy that and that dream that he was telling Jacob had already started to become. Okay. It started to already become to fruition that Joseph was going to rule. And Joseph already knew that his brothers was there. So he kind of coached them, went through the procedures of getting them down there. So the point I'm trying to get to is the land in which that Pharaoh gave Joseph and his brothers. Real quick, finish up 4.
Verse 4. I will go down with thee into Egypt, and I will also surely bring thee up again, and Joseph shall put his hand upon thine eyes.
Right. So now the Heavenly Father is giving them more prophecy. Read on.
Verse 5. And Jacob rose up from Beersheba, and the sons of Israel carried Jacob, their father, and their little ones, and their wives, and the wagons which Pharaoh has sent to carry him.
To carry them right there. Read 6. We can go to 6.
Verse 6. And they took their cattle and their goods, which they had gotten in the land of Canaan, and came into Egypt, Jacob and all his seed with him.
With all this seed with him. So stay in 46 and jump over to verse 28.
Verse 28. And he sent Judah before him unto Joseph, to direct his face unto Goshen. And they came into the land of Goshen. And Joseph made ready his chariots, and went up to meet Israel his father to Goshen, and presented himself unto him.
Right. So now here they are in Goshen. Okay. So he sent Judah first, and they said Judah was faced unto Goshen. Go ahead, read on.
And he fell on his neck and wept on his neck a good while. And Israel said unto Joseph, Now let me die, since I have seen thy face, because thou art yet alive.
Right, because he thought his son was dead. Go ahead.
And Joseph said unto his brethren and unto his father's house, I will go up and show Pharaoh, and say unto him, My brethren and my father's house, which were in the land of Canaan, are come unto me. And the men are shepherds, for their trade hath been to feed cattle, and they have brought their flocks and their herds and all that they have.
Right. So they brought all that they had, we know. And he said that Jacob and the whole family and the 12 sons, well, the 11 sons came down into Egypt. Now, the key is that, remember, I want you guys to remember this. It says that they were, and the men are sheep. Okay. Are cattlemen, put away, are sheep cattlemen, shepherds, I'm sorry, which are shepherds, right, that feed the cattle. So just keep that in mind, because we're going to read down a little bit more of what the Egyptians thought of the shepherds. Go ahead.
Verse 32. And the men are shepherds, for their trade have been to feed cattle.
Right, so that's their trade. Go ahead.
And they have brought their flocks and their herds and all that they have. And it shall come to pass, when Pharaoh shall call you, and shall say, What is your occupation? That they shall say, Thy servants' trade hath been about cattle from the youth even until now. But we and also our fathers, that we may dwell in the land of Goshen, for every shepherd is an abomination unto the Egyptians.
Right, you hear that? So every shepherd was an abomination to the Egyptians. Now, mind you, that this is how they looked upon not only Israelites as shepherd, but any kind of farmers as shepherd, because they're supposed to be set at a higher stature. All right. So just want to keep that in mind. With that being said, what was it? 34? That was it? Okay, so stay there. Let's go to 47. Jump right over to 47 and read in verse 1. Stay right here.
Gotcha. The book of Genesis chapter 47 and verse 1. Then Joseph came and told Pharaoh and said, My father and my brethren and their flocks and their herds and all that they have are come out of the land of Canaan, and behold, they are in the land of Goshen.
Now, remember Goshen now, because that's where it's going to jump off at. And that's the land that he gave the Israelites to actually stay there and to build their family and to progress within the land of Egypt. Go ahead.
Verse 2. And he took some of his brethren, even 5 men, and presented them unto Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said unto his brethren, What is your occupation? And they said unto Pharaoh, Thy servants are shepherds, both we and also our fathers. They said moreover unto Pharaoh, For to sojourn in the land are we come, for thy servants have no pastures for their flocks, for the famine is sore in the land of Canaan. Now therefore, we pray thee, let thy servants dwell in the land of Goshen.
Right, in the land of Goshen. So Goshen must have been flourished with, with plants and grass and things like that for the herd. So let's just keep that in mind. Verse 5.
Verse 5. And Pharaoh spake unto Joseph, saying, Thy father and thy brethren are come unto thee. The land of Egypt is before thee. In the best of the land make thy father and thy brethren to dwell in the land of Goshen.
Right.
Let
So
them
said
dwell.
The best of the land. So now, even though that was, like he said, one of the best parts of the land, but with Israel, the 12 tribes on it, it was going to be even more prosperous. Okay. Read on.
And if thou knowest any men of activity among them, then make them rulers over my cattle.
Mm-hmm. So now they remember that the Egyptians didn't like the sheep herders now, but with Joseph being there, they just said, you know what? Well, this is Joseph's family, so now we're gonna give them the best of the land. But as I go further into it a little bit more, we're gonna see what developed out of that land that the children of Israel was upon. Go ahead.
And Joseph brought in Jacob his father and set him before Pharaoh, and Jacob blessed Pharaoh.
You hear that? And Jacob blessed Pharaoh. Go ahead.
And Pharaoh said unto Jacob, how old art thou? And Jacob said unto Pharaoh, the days of the years of my pilgrimage are 130 years.
Mm-hmm.
Few and evil have the days of the years of my life been, and have not attained unto the days of the years of the life in my fathers in the days of their pilgrimage.
Right. Mm-hmm. Because remember, Jacob went through a battle. He had to, first of all, he had to get past Esau, right? And then once he got past Esau, then he got into the land where the Heavenly Father promised, in the land of Canaan, and then they started there. That's our forefathers, the 12 tribes. Verse 10.
Verse 10, and Jacob blessed Pharaoh and went out from before Pharaoh.
Now keep that in mind. Jacob blessed Pharaoh, a sheep herder, right? That they despise, but still in all, Pharaoh was humble enough to receive that blessing upon Jacob that Jacob gave him. Go ahead. Verse 11.
Verse 11, and Joseph placed his father and his brethren and gave them a possession in the land of Egypt, in the best of the land, in the land of Ramses.
In the land of Ramses. Go ahead.
And Pharaoh had commanded. And Joseph nourished his father and his brethren and all his father's household with bread according to their families.
According to their families. So now I want to go into and just shed a little light on Ramsey, right? The land of Ramsey, where the Israelites dwelled, with the land they was given. And going to this book right here, it says the lost technology of ancient Egypt. Okay. So now I'm not going to get deep into it. It's just some that it's one thing about the books that in my little library, I've always asked the Heavenly Father, I say, there's so much out there. Just bless me with books that I can understand or come across where, that it's not too much a burden upon me to read, right? Because there's so much out there. There's so many books to do, to look through and to find out where's the meat, where's not the meat. But so far, the Heavenly Father blessed me, and He just sent certain books that came my way through other people. Wasn't even really asking about it, just to spark up a conversation. They'd be like, hey, I got a book, here you go. So this is one of them. Now, this book, it just goes into all of the engineering that Esau now go down to Egypt and excavate their pyramids and the land that they was dwelling in. So, and they just find it just completely amazing how they can actually have structures like that without they quote unquote modern technology, how they was able to move certain stones, how they was able to craft certain stones without, chiseling or breaking the stone and things like that. Engineering, put it that way, engineering. So, but I want to go in here and just start off with this. We're just going to read the little preludes right here.
Mm-hmm.
And Rock, can you bring this up? It's one of these images right here. It's on the side. The author is Christopher Dunn. Christopher Dunn. I haven't really did any research on the author, but I've looked in the book and it's got some really interesting, very interesting. They really trying to find out how did they actually build these pyramids. And then they found out that there's so much geometry that is involved into it and algebra that's involved into it that they just, it's amazing. And they still today can't figure out and can't realize that, people actually did this and not machines. Okay, so you see it? You bring it up?
Bring it up right now.
Okay. Yeah. Here, and then I'm just gonna go here, just to show how they're using their technology. They're using their computers to actually zoom in and try to get certain angles and geometry and all of this stuff. How was it done without being computerized and done by machinery. Okay.
All right. Plate 1. The seated Ramses in Ramses Hall at Luxor. The sculptor who has worked in stone, and to the technologist whose job is to shape adamant materials, the sculpture calls out a question and issues a challenge.
Right. Is that it?
What am I? How did I come to exist? Build another one just like me.
Right. So now let's keep in mind where he says Ramsey, right? So that's in the land of Ramsey. But then he said, what am I? And do what now? Read that last.
What am I?
Mm-hmm.
And how do I come to exist? Build another one just like me.
Okay, build another one just like me. So why haven't, if those people actually built the pyramids, had the technology of understanding how to structure certain things, why don't the Egyptians go back and start refurbishing it? Why are they this in this out there in the desert right now, just kind of decaying, and why they can't refurbish them? See, that's the thought I'm always having in my mind. But we see that in the book of Genesis, in the land of Goshen is where the Israelites were. And in that area, right, they call it Ramses. So the Israelites dwelt in Ramsey, in Goshen. And then from there, we're going to see a little bit more of what was actually in that region. Okay. We're going to try, we just leave it alone. Oh, okay. My bad. I should have done a better job on that. So right here. That's it. Yeah. Read that again.
Gotcha. Plate 1. Seated Ramses in Ramses Hall at Luxor. The sculptor who has worked in stone and to the technologist whose job it is to shape adamant materials, the sculpture calls out a question and issues a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
What am I? How did I come to exist? Build another just like me.
Right. Build another just like me. Like I said before, that they haven't. And they can't, because the people who actually built it are not there. Because think about it. Now, in this quote unquote age of technology and modern technology and money, everybody, they trying to Esau makes his money, the Egyptians all over the world, everybody want to make money. So why don't they restore them, set things back up the way Egypt used to be, so that they can get the tourists there, more tourists than what they have now, and make money off of this? Why haven't that happened? Okay, why haven't that happened? Because right here in the book of Genesis, like I said, we know that the Israelites dwelt in Goshen. Okay, flip the other page. See the other one? Yeah, it should be right next. I think they're in order.
Plate 2. Along the length and width of each crown, the surface follows simple arcs as a result of careful deliberation in concept, design, and manufacture.
Mm-hmm. Keep reading.
Plate 3. The scale of the Egyptians' accomplishment is no better described than Ramses looking down on a throne of visitors to the temple.
Right, because that's what we're gonna get into. That's what they wanted to do. They Ramses said, "I want you to build a statue of me," and that's what the Israelites did at that time. All right, that's why he said, "Well, if they could do it again, why not redo it? Build one and build another one like me." Okay. Yeah, we're just gonna read over here, and then we start seeing the technology the computerized technology that they tried. Just a little brief right there.
Plate 4. Ramses' geometry speaks of an ambiguous quality and exactness.
Mm-hmm.
Plate 5. A happy coincidence and interplay between ancient geometry and art.
Right, between geometry and art. So they consider the both of them as geometry and art, which they are. But my point is that, like I said, we dwelled in Goshen. So we were the builders of these statues. We were the builders of the pyramids. I mean, like I said, now the Egyptians was there. They was in rule. They had their say-so of it. But who was doing all the labor and the work, just like we here in America, who's doing all the labor and the work. Okay, just some inserts.
Plate 6.
You see plate 6 right here? The circles on it, geometry circles.
Plate 6. Divine harmony and iconic art combined in a symphony cut into stone.
Mm-hmm.
Plate 7. Ramses at Memphis provides further evidence of uncompromising precision with ancient three-dimensional profiling.
Right. So now they went in their computers and did three-dimensional. When our forefathers, right, didn't even have all of that. They just built on just pure talent, pure structure and talent. All right. Can you get the bigger one? Right. On to the next one.
Plate 8. The Ramseum. Ramses inspires those in the presence to pay respect and understand what they behold.
Mm-hmm. See, and respect to what they behold. So now, with that just being said, it goes further on. It gives more pictures because I love pictures. But we're gonna read this one article right here. Can you go to this article real quick? All right. So we're just gonna read this article. We're just gonna read it up to about here. That's it.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, that I'll get another precept for that one.
Figure 2.1, the cosmic egg.
Real quick. You got it on there yet?
Got it. Okay. Figure 2.1, the cosmic egg. Resoundingly, what emerges in the... You want from this side or just from this side?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
From all the way
Yeah.
back? Okay, I got you. The symbols left behind by the ancient Egyptian culture, a civilization that was brought down by a force of nature, we tremble to image or imagine what have been the inspirations of countless scholars, artists, and ordinary lay people.
Now, all I want you to do is just listen to what this guy is actually explaining of the knowledge that he ran across by just being there and understanding how the structures was made. So he's putting it into his words on how amazing that this thing is and how it came to be. Go ahead.
When it comes to studies of ancient Egyptian art and sculpture, the images we see evoke admiration and wonder to spark the imagination about what Egyptian civilization found important. Resoundingly, what emerges is what ancient Egyptians were deeply immersed in, the mysteries of life and the survival of the soul after death.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, they were not so submerged in spiritual matters that they showed materialistic comfort and pleasure.
Right. So now when he's saying that in spiritual matters, that's a bone. I throw that out because Israel's always been spiritual. But what the Egyptians was into, they was into idolatry. They was into, like you say, materialism, as they say, because they thought once they die, they wanted to have servants, coffins, gold, cups, tables, everything. They wanted all of that to die with them. And come to find out, that didn't do any good because Esau came along and dug it all up and making millions on top of it. So that right there, that's a bone. You just spit that one out. Go ahead.
They acknowledged the hand of superior forces in the universe, and they spent a considerable portion of their wealth paying homage to the fickleness of gods as nature was interpreted by them and appeasing the preparing to be affected by nature's cycle on both a personal and community level.
Now that's spiritual. If you listen at it, that's spiritual right there. Go ahead.
From what we studied in chapter 1, we can gather that the community, as a community, the Egyptians must have had an education system that taught citizens to understand geometry, and that they used geometry in a sophisticated way. The crowns in the Luxor and Karnak temples provide insight into a heretofore hidden school of design and manufacturing that started on the drawing board and resulted in finely crafted, very exact and exquisite artifacts.
Mm.
Though they have been severely damaged by unknown forces, a sufficient amount of evidence remains that allows us to gather data with which to make an accurate analysis. Scattered on the ground from Alexandria to Cairo to Aswan, the evidence tool to granite, direct quartz, and basalt, the hardest substances the ancient Egyptians could find in large amounts.
Right. So that's a stone that they're saying is one of the hardest stones that is found in Egypt. And they was trying, that's the whole thing. They was trying to figure out how can they sculpture precise statues and shapes out of this rock that was one of the hardest stones that was in Egypt without having, quote unquote, the modern technology to do it. So just keep that in mind. Go ahead.
Maybe all that is felt to tell us how technically advanced these people were.
That these people were. Go ahead.
To seriously consider replicating their accomplishments is a step toward understanding their advancement.
Right, but that hasn't happened. Like I said before, it hasn't happened. Go ahead.
Continuing with the Ramses challenge, in this chapter, we will study the head of Ramses statue that sits outside the temple of Luxor, just a few feet from the obelisk. We don't know what forces separated the head from the body, but for our purpose, it seems quite fortuitous in that it allows for a close inspection.
Right, that's good. That's good enough. I just wanted to make the point he's saying that, like he said, how did they actually was able to get the sculptures out of this hard work, as well as he said that they must have been using, like he said, they was using geometry along with it, but just the structure on how they got it done and advance the height and how many, because it was thousands of them. So they had to put in a lot of work. But, over the time when we was in Egypt, is how we prospered and how we multiplied. Go ahead.
Oh, just a point to make is it's important that what they said in the book regarding the temples of Ramses, because most archaeologists and historians will, and even the scriptures let us know that the children of Israel built treasure cities for Ramesses.
Right.
So they, there were other pyramids that Israel didn't build. We can't take credit for everything.
Right.
That's not true.
True.
We had Mesopotamia, had the mound cities and the temple mounds that were built during Abraham's time. So the structure built, those wasn't new. But the detail that you're reading of the ones in Ramesses was different than some of the other ones.
Right.
And that meant the children of Israel had something to do with the more detailed structures, the more advanced ones made by our people. That's
Good point. Good point. Good
Well,
point.
look at the United States. We built this,
True that.
and they taking credit for it.
Well, that's what we're gonna find out a little bit more about that and what Windsor said. We're gonna go into him a little bit. Just read this right here about the noses, because that's another thing. As like I said, it's a lot of them that's in there.
We said they got destroyed, but they don't know how.
Right. They don't know how.
The head.
Yeah, they don't know how. Okay. But now, like you said, when you go there, I would love to visit. Now that I'm reading a little bit more about them, I would love to go visit just to see the mass scale on it, on how they built it. And not only that, but they preserved a lot of them to a point where in that little book that they had it roped off. So they actually kind of preserving them, what's left of them, over the years. But, we all know about the nose. The Sphinx, as they go in and try to chop the nose off. Why were they trying to do that? So just want to read this one little article about the nose situation.
Mark Lanier's statement concerning the early 15th century Arab historian who reported that the face of the Sphinx had been disfigured at that time references the writings of the Arab historian El-Makrizi, who died in 1436 ACE. El-Makrizi's comments regarding the event are as follows. In our time, there was a man whose name was Same el-Dair, one of the Sufis. This man wished to remedy religious matters, and he went to the pyramids and disfigured the face of Abdul Ho.
Right. So now this is like one of the beginnings of them start disfiguring the faces of the Sphinx. Why? Is because of the nose situation. Because I'm gonna bring out one or two pictures dealing with the heads they found down in Mexico, the Olmec. Okay. Now that's something to bring out because you figure I'm starting thinking like, well, these Olmec's heads, they had these brothers with wide nose, and why did they go and start knocking off the nose off the Sphinx? You know, it had to be something along with that as well. They must have had wide nose. They didn't destroy any other part of the head, just the nose and the lips. I'm sorry, and the lips. Go ahead.
Which has remained in this state from that time to the present. From the time of the disfigurement, the sand has invaded the cultivated sands of Giza, and the people attribute this to the disfigurement of Abul Ho. Nowhere in the statement does El Markrizi mention that portion of the face was disfigured or the extent of the damage. It seems reasonable. Had one nose been broken, it would have been mentioned.
Okay, can you bring up? I think I got it in the top there in Google. Yeah.
It's an article.
Hmm?
It's an article.
No, it's just a figure of the faces. It's in there. I should have had that. Yeah, the drawing of it. It's in the tabs. I'm sorry. Sorry, we're gonna read that one right there again once you get that, because it's talking about the disfigurement of the faces, and then we're gonna read this right here. Go ahead and read that. Did you figure it out? You see it? It's just a tab up top. You can just share it. You don't see it?
The one with the Olmec head, or you want the Ramses?
The Ramses head. I'm sorry.
Okay. Nowhere in this statement does El Markrizi mention what portion of the face was disfigured or the extent of the damage.
Right, because he did it. Go ahead.
It seems reasonable. Had the nose been broken, it would have been mentioned.
Right. So I just wanted to bring that up. It's just so how massive it is. And some of the noses are still on there. But now read that right there.
Computer generated image of the Sphinx, which is to be used as a model for facial reconstruction.
Right. So now a lot of them, they went in, they tried to reconstruction it. Right. Some of them they just couldn't do at all. All right. So, and this book here, I'm sorry, it's this book here. Read that from the top. Let me get that precept real quick. I mean, just the name of it.
Oh, the Nile Valley what is it? Contributions to civilization.
Now, this book was given to me by a brother, Ashar. You know, he had gave this book to me, and like I said, I've been in and out of it, but I'm gonna go a little bit more into it because they get a little modernized, and they also show you it's a lot of it about Egypt, a lot about how our people dwell in Egypt and how what they was actually doing and what structures that they was giving credit for. Didn't really want to go all the way into it, but it's got some really good articles in there. So if you want to put this in your library, you know, the Nile River contributions to civilization, it's a really good one. Okay, really good one. It's another article I want to hear that you want you to read. Let's see if I can get it out. Now we can go to the Olmec heads. You bring them up. Let me know when you get it. Now, I'm just bringing this out just to show, you know, once again, how, like I said, they don't know if they're Israel or not, but I tell you one thing from the scriptures that we're reading, how Israel was traveling on ships and how Israel was going over to other parts of the world to bring back precious commodities to Solomon, right, and his kingdom, that y'all tell me, I'm just saying. But I also want to bring out as well just the features of the Olmec heads that they found over in Mexico. All right, we can read that.
The Nile Valley presence in Mesoamerica. The question of an African presence in early American civilizations was first raised in 1858 when a gigantic head with African features was discovered in the village of the Tres Zapotes in Mexico.
Mhm.
A brief description of the head appeared in the Bulletin of the Mexican Society of Geography and Statistics in 1869. It was authored by Jose Meglar, and it read, in 1862, I was in the region of San Andres Tuxtla, a town in the state of Veracruz in Mexico. During my excursions, I learned that a colossal head had been unearthed a few years before. On my arrival at the hacienda, I asked the owner of the property where the head was discovered to take me to look at it. We went, and I was struck with surprise. As a work of art is without exaggeration a magnificent sculpture. What astonished me was the Ethiopic type represented.
Now, where he get Ethiopian from? You know, that's when I had to question that. So, number one, I just took it as, Ethiopians were considered as blackface. So that means that they're dark skins, because at one time they called Israel Ethiopians, but that just means dark skin on certain instances. Go ahead.
I reflected that there had undoubtedly been Negroes in this country, and that this head had been the first epoch in the world.
So now that's profound, because he said Negroes. Okay, go ahead.
Contemporary scholars reacted to Melgar's discovery with great skepticism, and a serious investigation was not undertaken until many years later.
Right. So now what do they have to discuss? If he said Negroes, that's what the statue looked like. And it's one thing we used to always say, this brother looked like one of the brothers back in the day named War. We used to always say, brother, that probably was your tribe. You know what I'm saying? Because he really favored this brother to look just like him. So we used to say that. But real quick, let's get First Kings. Let's get First Kings chapter 9 and verse 26. Right? Because the man said Negroes, and when he said that, wait a minute, we got to discuss this. We got to discuss this. But I'm bringing out First Kings because Solomon, we're going to find out what Solomon, because the Israelites was traveling all over the world. Verse 26.
The book of First Kings, chapter 9, and verse 26. And King Solomon made a navy of ships in Ezion Geber, which is beside Eloth, on the shore of the Red Sea, in the land of Edom.
Go ahead.
And Hiram sent in the navy of his servants, shipmen that had knowledge of the sea, with the servants of Solomon.
Right. So now we know that Solomon had a naval of ships. So when you have a naval of ships, that's multiple ships. And they went out and excavated the world, period. And we also know that Hiram was one of David's servants who actually brought in, precious wood and other commodities into the time that Solomon actually was ruling the children of Israel. That's what makes his kingdom set up on a grand scale. Okay, so it says, start 27 again.
Verse 27. And Hiram sent the navy of his servants.
So it says, and Hiram sent the navy of his servants. So not only did Israel have a naval of ships, the other nations had ships as well. Go ahead.
Shipmen that had knowledge of the sea, with the servants of Solomon. And they came to Ophir and fetched from thence gold 420 talents and brought it to King Solomon.
So let's get Judges. Let's find out Judges chapter 5 and verse 17. $80 million. 80. What's that? Of gold? Well, that's what it came up to.
80,640,000.
That's some. 5 and 17. Brother Rasha was giving us the numbers on how much that was in modern day. The gold that they brought to Solomon. It was how much?
80,640,000.
Sheesh.
That's a lot.
80,644,000.
He wasn't
That's
playing.
bold.
Man.
What did I say, 5 and 17?
Yeah. Book of Judges, chapter 5, and verse 17. Gilead abode beyond Jordan,
Uh-huh.
and why did Dan remain in ships?
So it says, and why did Dan remain in ships? Because Dan was one of the tribes of Israel, and he was a seafarer, right? They stayed on the seas. Go ahead.
Asher continued on the seashore and abode in his breeches.
Right, and abode in his breeches. So they stayed on the ships. They stayed seafaring tribes. So they could have went over there, right, with their men and with their architects and formulated, because that's one thing that Israel did. When Israel was out searching out for other lands, they will always leave marks that they were actually there. Okay, they were out, and Dan is one of the tribes that also used to leave their name. They used to name the place after their name. Okay, and throughout history. So I just want to bring out that. Let's go to Genesis. Let's go to Genesis chapter 49 to find out a little bit more what our forefathers, the 12 tribes, was capable of. Genesis chapter 49 and 16 to 17.
Book of Genesis, chapter 49, and verse 16.
Just to prove that Dan was part of Israel. Go ahead.
Dan shall judge his people as one of the tribes of Israel. Dan shall be as a serpent by the way, an adder in the path, but biteth the horse's heels, so that his rider shall fall backward.
Right. So that's the prophecy that the Most High placed upon the tribe of Dan. And in the book of Genesis 49, this is prophecies that he placed on all of the 12 sons of their characteristics that they had within their tribes. All right. So just want to bring that out. So can you read that again real quick? And then we'll move on to the next one.
Contemporary scholars reacted to Melgar's discovery with great skepticism, and a serious investigation was not undertaken until many years later.
Mm-hmm.
Matthew Sterling, a researcher with financial backing from the Smithsonian Institution and the National Geographic Society, led an archaeological team to Tres Zapotes in 1939 and excavated the gigantic head that Melgar had described 77 years earlier. The head was carved from a single block of basalt, and its measurements were astounding. It was described as being 8 feet high, 18 feet in circumference, and it weighed more than 10 tons. Sterling's description of the head echoed the sediments of Melgar, he stated.
Then it goes on and could say a little bit more about him, but so that's what I wanted to bring out about the Olmecs, right? Just to show the nose of the sculpture as well, right? And the lips, the nose and the lips. Now, just keep that in mind, because, like I said, it was possible that our forefathers to sail around the world and to cultivate and make these structures all around the world as signs, that we actually been there throughout history. Okay, so now I want to go into famous Babylon and Timbuktu. All right, now I'm going to go back to Ramsey because I'm going to read. Let's read 90 first. Page 90, and then I'm going to go into that. I'm going to Babylon, Timbuktu, and just listen to this scholar as he kind of done his research on the children of Israel. Good book. I'm quite sure a lot of people have, a lot of Israelites have it, but the structure that and the information that the man put into this book is just astounding. It really is. Yeah, we're gonna read that. Now we. Like I said, now we're just seeing kind of like the structures around the world, as well as the just saying how the children of Israel dwelt in Egypt and the structures that came out of Egypt, right? That the Israelites helped the Egyptians. But let's see some of the skills that Winsler said about these people, these Black Jews, these Black Western Jews, the skills that they actually had.
From Babylon and Timbuktu, page 90. The Black Jews had an advantage over the African tribes. They carried their culture, history, laws, and written records with them. This assured them a constant precedent for the development of a higher social organization.
Right. So now let's think about it. Let's go back to Joseph when he came into Goshen, right? And the things that came out of Goshen. Let's hear what this engineer has said about, all of the things that they have discovered about the ancient Egyptians. But let's think about also the talents that Israel had. And is this thing possible that we could have done these things? Go ahead.
Because of the stability of the Black Jewish culture, the Jews were not absorbed into what's this one? I don't know.
Yeah,
Was not absorbed into the population.
We're gonna look that one up. We're gonna have to look that one up because it's combined. I don't know.
In fact, the Jews absorbed some of the native tribes. The Jews made use
so
of
they said within their talent that they even that they absorbed the other tribes. Why? Is because of the talent that the Black Jews came with. Okay, so they was advancing, even though we dwelt in Africa, but we was advancing them Hamites, them Africans that was there. Okay, but why? Because we had a long history of how we were in Egypt.
Autochthonous.
I don't even think that's a word.
Autochthonous.
I never heard of that.
Rudolph Flintstone.
Right.
I don't even look it up. We're gonna continue. I would like to know because he did describe the Black Jews as that, our forefathers as that.
Right.
But somebody want to look it up, they can.
Right. Where we at? Let's
go past.
The Jews were absorbed into the autochthonous population. In fact, the Jews absorbed some of the native tribes. The Jews made use of every opportunity. They were an industrious and skillful people.
Right, industrious and skillful people. Go ahead.
The Jewish Ghanaian states were found kings, princes, governors, generals, secretaries, treasurers, revenue agents, judges, architects, engineers, doctors, historians, language interpreters, mathematicians, jewelers, sculptors, masons, carpenters, painters of art, goldsmiths, leather workers, potters, armorers, saddlers, blacksmiths, agriculturists, etc.
Okay, and it's a etc. So now you're gonna tell me that them white Jewish people can lay claim that they are the children of Israel? Come on. Go ahead, Radha.
That word, it means aboriginals is one of the earliest known inhabitants of any country.
Aboriginals? So
yeah,
they're trying
so
to
basically the people that, like the earliest known people that inhabited that land, that's what that word means.
Okay.
As I said,
Thank you for
we
that.
weren't
Absorbed
absorbed.
into their cultures.
It means the native people of that land, like indigenous, we weren't.
We wasn't of that land.
We weren't buying into it.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
Native Hamites over there. We wasn't
Right.
Right.
Okay. All right.
In other words, we were set apart, like always.
As we are today. As we are today.
They just don't want to admit it was Jake's.
Well, but with all of those skills that, like he said, that we had, like you said, even though they don't want to admit it, but it's there.
It's there.
And it's here in America as well. It's here in America as
They're in a
well.
state of denial, remember?
Mm-hmm.
Because they don't want to accept the chosen.
That's right.
They can't even fathom that we are a chosen people set
That's right.
apart.
Absolutely.
The lie has to perpetuate itself.
Absolutely. I want you to start right there again. The Jews. Yeah.
In the
Jewish.
In the Jewish Ghanaian states were found kings, princes, governors, generals, secretaries, treasurers, revenue agents, judges, architects, engineers,
Architects, engineers. Go ahead.
doctors, historians, language interpreters, mathematicians, jewelers, sculptors, masons, carpenters, painters of art, goldsmith, leather workers, potters, armorers, saddlers, blacksmith, agriculturists, etc.
Now, with that being said, like I said before, with all of that talent, you can see why Pharaoh was hard in his heart and said, I ain't letting them go. I can't let them go.
Right.
Because mind you, all the time we was there decades in Egypt, decades before we even went into slavery once again. But that's one reason they say I can't let them go. No way. Not as much as my kingdom has prospered since they've been there. So we want to see, is Esau gonna do the same? Is he gonna let us go? I don't know. The Most High is gonna pull his card though. Go ahead, bro.
You know, when you think about it, when you really look into it, suppose every Jake and sister stop working for a day.
Con.
One day, just one day. What do you think would happen to this economy? This nation?
Definitely crash.
It'll crumble.
Definitely crash. I think one of the first ones to crumble will be here in California though, because of our 10 tribe brothers, how much work they put in here. I mean, they hustling every day, every day. Okay. So let's real quick, let's see if I can go into Genesis. Yeah. Well, you know what? No, I'm sorry. I want to go to my other tab.
Okay.
Yeah, my other tab right here. I just want this paragraph here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Genesis first, are you saying?
No, I'm gonna go here first.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll go here, then I'm gonna be finished with these books and stuff and go back to the scriptures.
Okay. So we got Babylon and Timbuktu, page 69. Dealing with Ramses II.
So now we're dealing with Ramses II, right? Now I couldn't bring up to see which pharaoh was in power during Moses' time. It was hard to say. A lot of people were saying a lot of things. So I was like, nah, I'm gonna leave that alone. But this Ramses that he's speaking about, he's gonna go further detail in him because he was a powerful pharaoh at the time.
Ramses II was the fourth king of the 19th dynasty from 1292 to 1225 BC, and the son of Seti the first. He was a pure black, had thick lips and a broad nose like the people of Western Sudan today.
Right. So now I wanted to bring that out because once again, I'm going to bring back the white Jewish people. So now you're going to tell me they had all them Edomites running around in Egypt with a king that said that he said was black with thick nose and thick lips and things like that. So why don't they show that? I mean, they got all of this film and they can go back and bring up history and pictures and art and the what you call that? The hieroglyphs. Yeah, the hieroglyphs and all that. Why they don't if they're the chosen people, why don't they show that information?
Well, that would make you Brennan all them lies.
There you go. Charles and Hester, that's right.
Hollywood's in full of wool.
They just recently were trying to cancel Kevin Hart for saying that the Egyptians was black, and he was going to do a show in Egypt.
Oh, they sure did.
Canceled the show, and then they were trying to protest talking about you promoting this Pan-African.
Yeah,
sure did.
About, the Egyptians was black. Canceling.
They sure did.
Like, oh, okay.
They sure did. So let's read about this pharaoh with his black lips, with big lips. Put it that way.
Big black lips.
And the son of Seti the first, he was pure black, had thick lips and a broad nose like the people of Western Sudan today.
Right. So now just think about the Olmec heads. I'm just saying, because Esau, the scripture said he's red and hairy, he's gonna stand out before all other nations. So now we have the Egyptians looking this way, described as one of the pharaohs, and then you have the Israelites also described as dark complexion. So where do they fit in at? That's all I'm saying. I'm just want to put that out there. All right, go ahead.
He was a warlike pharaoh, industrious and energetic, ruling Egypt for over 67 years. In the early years of his reign, he engaged in an important campaign against the Hittites at Kadesh, near Syria. The battle was indecisive. Finally, he signed a permanent peace treaty with the king of the Hittites, married the king's daughter, and the remaining years of his life were relatively peaceful.
Right. So now we're just going back into some history because the scriptures tell you search the old ways and the old past. So we're just going back in some history just to read a little bit more of what was actually going on during that time. Go ahead.
Ramses II is also known for his national public work projects because these projects required a forced labor of thousands of Hebrew slaves.
Right. So here we go. So now what he wanted to build, it required, like he said, the blood, the sweat, the tears of the Hebrews, right? And at that time, it seems like we was in slavery. Go ahead.
He is known as the Pharaoh of the oppression. He was a boastful, vainglorious, tyrannical personality who sought to astound humanity by covering the country with uh, megalithic structures. Well, megalithic structures.
Right, meaning huge. I mean, he wanted everything to be huge. Go ahead.
This Ramses transferred the capital of the Nile Delta. The Black Jews constructed the treasured cities, Pithom and Ramses. Ramses developed the Nile Delta and had slaves build Egypt's megaliths and the colonnade at Luxor and its gigantic pylon, in front of which he placed 6 colossal statues of himself. Each of these statues was almost 60 feet high. Ramses II erased his predecessors' names from the records and submitted his own.
Mm-hmm.
This Ramses also constructed the hypostyle hall of Karnak and the temple called the Ramseum near Thebes.
Right. So now when we went back and we had read about them other Edomite scholars, well, not scholars, but the other Edomite researchers, when they was knocking off the nose of the Sphinx, right? So now we see why. Because this pharaoh was described as dark, described as having big lips, sort of like we've seen with the Olmecs, but I'm just trying to put the comparison on the people that was actually there at that time. And this is what I'm putting together. This is one of the reasons why they shaved off the noses of them. All right, so I want to continue with this though. I want to go to this page here. Got my other page set up.
They didn't shave them off. They shot them off with shotgun. That's what they
Really?
did.
They did? I didn't know that.
Yeah, they did that with rifles.
They did that with rifles?
Uh-huh.
Wow. I think I'm going with that.
No, I think it was Bonaparte.
Yeah, Napoleon. I had read that too. I didn't want to bring it out because it was too much. Yeah, they were saying Napoleon was one of the first ones that was actually destroying the heads of them, you know. So yeah. So let's go and yeah, I'm done with that. Let's go into Moses. Let's go on. I'm sorry, Moses. I said Moses. Let's go into Exodus chapter 2 and 10.
I want the truth out there.
Nah.
Well, this is what the governor in Florida is fighting against.
Yeah.
He doesn't want our history out there.
Yeah.
And they're getting it legislated too.
Really?
Yeah.
But the only thing holding them back, you got the history in your back pocket, everybody.
Thank you.
So they can, he fighting a losing battle. Them kids can just go right there and punch up on their iPhone, whatever they need.
That's right. That's right. So, like I said, this pharaoh, like you said, and all the other pharaohs, because I don't think there was no big difference between this pharaoh of Ramses II with the other pharaohs. I mean, it could have been some that could have been lighter skinned, this, that, and other, but they sure wasn't Edomites. Okay, they definitely wasn't Edomites. All right. Exodus 2 and 10.
Book of Exodus chapter 2 and verse 10.
Just want to get Moses real quick.
And the child grew, and she brought him unto Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. And she called his name Moses, and she said, because I drew him out of the water.
Out of the water. So let's stay in Exodus and let's go to 4 and 6. And she drew Moses out of the water. Okay.
The book of Exodus chapter 4 and verse 6. And the Lord said furthermore unto him.
So now the Lord is actually talking to Moses because Moses was hesitant on what his mission was to bring the children of Israel out of Egypt. Okay. Now, like I said before, I wanted to read that just to give a visual of the people that was there, including us, you know, the Egyptians, the Israelites. So now we're going into, then we went into skin color, the nose, the lips. So I want to just bring out the color of Moses, you know, what complexion Moses could have been. Go ahead.
Verse 6. And the Lord said furthermore unto him, put now thine hand into thy bosom. And he put his hand into his bosom. And when he took it out, behold, his hand was leprous as snow.
Lepers is no. Go ahead.
And he said, Put thine hand into thy bosom again. And he put his hand into his bosom again, and plucked it out of his bosom, and behold, it was turned again as his other flesh.
As his other flesh. So just to pull out to say that, if it was lepers, meaning skin color turned white, what is that disease that have when the pigmentation leaves your skin? Vitiligo. Okay, just picture that, There you go, Mike. So he put his hand in there, came out. The Most High was actually showing him a sign of how he was going to deal with Moses, put it back in. And that was a big thing at that time, along with his sister Miriam. Miriam, he turned as a leopard. Okay. So it just showed you that the color is definitely in the scriptures. And these people who are claiming to be Jews are not the true people, all the way around, talent wise, visual wise, spiritually wise. It's just not. It just can't.
Right.
Just can't put the finger on. Right. So let's go to Isaiah chapter 29.
Another good precept on what you just said, the people that's claiming to be Jews, is that Revelation 2 and 9 and 3 and 9.
2 and 9, 3 and 9. We'll go there. Let's get that first.
Revelation.
Yeah, let's bring that out.
Those are classics.
Yeah, sure are. But it's Isaiah 2. It's Isaiah 2.
The book of Revelation, chapter 2, and verse 9. I know thy works and tribulation and poverty, but thou art rich. And I know the blasphemy of them which say they are Jews and are not.
That's right.
But are the synagogues of Satan.
The synagogues of Satan. And that's true. You can do the history about the white Jewish people, throughout history and what they actually owned and what they actually controlled. They are the synagogue of Satan.
And they worship in synagogues.
Thank you. And they worship in synagogues. Absolutely. Can we get that Isaiah chapter 39, 22?
39 or 29?
I'm sorry, 29.
29 and you said 22?
Yeah, 29. Like Rashi, the old ones, old classics. Because as we see so far, just dealing with Egypt and certain structures and certain statues that come out of Egypt, we know for a fact that, once again, they have mentioned it a lot of times with Negroes, or they considered as, Africans.
What
Isaiah.
Book of Isaiah, chapter 29, and verse 22. Therefore, thus saith the Lord, who redeemed Abraham concerning the house of Jacob. Jacob shall not be ashamed, neither shall his face now wax pale.
Right, exactly. Neither shall his face wax pale. Whether the hardships that he's going through, right, or the disconfiguration, of them trying to bring up certain pictures and bringing out certain things in Hollywood to say that these people portray, like say Moses or the Israelites, our face will never wax pale. Okay,
That's a classic too.
Sure is. I got you another one. Let's go to Jeremiah chapter 13, verse 23. Because out of all of this, we're still here, and we're still here with our pigmentation, even though they try to take it away from us. They try to make it dirty. They try to talk about it, but still in all, they're in tanning boots, trying to get tan. Thank you.
Right.
13 to 23.
The book of Jeremiah, chapter 13, and verse 23. Can the Ethiopian change his skin?
Right. So once again, like I said, they use Ethiopian because they use that as a description on what color those people were. So he said, can an Ethiopian change his skin? Go ahead.
Or the leopard his spots? Then may ye also do good that are accustomed to do evil.
Right. That are accustomed to do evil. So now he's talking to the Israelites there, but he's just making a point to saying that it can't change. Once the Heavenly Father has set certain things in order, they can't be changed. All we have to do is look in that old path, look at that history behind or what they're trying to hide and dig it out and then bring it forth. All right. Let's go to Acts. Let's find out about Paul.
Who's gonna make straight what he done already made crooked?
That's right.
Go to Acts.
Yep. Acts chapter 21. Because one of the things I wanted to bring out a lot about Egypt, right? And then I wanted to bring out the features of the people that was back in that time, including the Egyptians as well as the Israelites. So let's see what they said against Paul. Acts 21 and verse 38.
Got you. The book of Acts, chapter 21 and verse 38. Art not thou that Egyptian?
Right. So now he said, can a leopard change his colors? Right. So now they saying to Paul, the revelator, the one that traveled, the one that went and got and gave the message to the Gentiles. Right. So they try to put all of the Gentiles as the whole world. No, those Israelites that were scattered abroad, that he had to bring the gospel of Yahweh Shai to those in different regions other than the land of Jerusalem. Starting from the top.
Verse 38. Art not thou that Egyptian, which before these days made us an uproar and led us out into the wilderness for 1,000 men that were murderers?
Read on.
Verse 29. But Paul said, I am a man which am a Jew of Tarsus, a city of Cilicia, a citizen of no mean city, and I beseech thee, suffer me to speak unto the people.
Right. So he said, but they described him as what? An Ethiopian. But then he corrected them and said, no, I am a Jew. And just like the brother Elder Sha'ath went into in Revelations, when he said that them that call themselves are Jews, but are not. All right. Start at 29 again.
39.
Oh, at 30. I'm sorry.
Verse 39. Well, Paul said, I am a man which am a Jew of Tarsus, a city of Cilicia, a citizen of no mean city, and I beseech thee, suffer me to speak unto the people.
Okay, read on.
Verse 40. And when he had given him license, Paul stood on the stairs and beckoned with the hand unto the people. And when there was made a great silence, he spake unto them in the Hebrew tongue,
Hebrew tongue. Okay. In the Hebrew tongue. So he made clearly what his nationality was. And actually, he always announced his tribe or where he came from. Now, that's the beauty of Israelites back then and there, is they can actually, pinpoint throughout their history and their forefathers what tribe they actually came from. And that's one of the curses that we fall upon, because we cannot do that. We can't say that we from this particular tribe, so on and so forth, and actually prove it because of the scattering. Okay. So that's one more. Let's get Romans. Let's get Romans chapter 11. So Paul made it clear. I am a Jew. Romans 11 and 1.
Gotcha. The book of Romans chapter 11 and verse 1. I say then, have God cast away his people? God forbid, for I also am an Israelite of the seed of Abraham, of the tribe of Benjamin.
Now, once again, he's announcing who he is, his nationality. Now he's announcing his tribe. Read on.
God hath not cast away his people.
So he's saying that we have not been cast away. Now we've been disobedient, and now we're in captivity, but he has not cast away his people. Go ahead.
Which he foreknew. Wote ye not what the scripture saith of Elias, how he maketh intercession to God against Israel, saying, Lord, they have killed thy prophets and digged down thine altars, and I am left alone, and they seek my life. But what saith the answer of God unto him?
Right.
I have reserved to myself 7,000 men who have not bowed the knee to the image of Baal.
That's right. Read on.
Verse 5. Even so, then at this present time, also there is a remnant according to the election of grace.
Absolutely. And that remnant is that 1/3, the ones that in this modern day is willing to accept their nationality as Israelites, are willing to accept the laws and commandments and rehearse those laws and commandments throughout their lives, and the ones who are actually bringing forth this faith that we have. So once again, we can look back in history and we can bring up a lot of, a lot more of what our forefathers have left signs for us so that we can recognize ourselves. We can do that all throughout histories, but now, once again, as they try to cover it up by putting as those white Jewish people in our land, that's something that they had to answer for, but it was prophesied that they will squat on it. It's prophesied. So Paul even made the example, like he said, I am from the tribe of Benjamin, but they mistaken him as an Egyptian. So we went into just a few of the little history of Egypt. And, with that, I call that real Black history. Okay. Real Black history. So I'm going to leave you guys with that. So, shalom.